Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start in just a minute and give everyone a chance to get onto the webinar. Okay, we're going to get started. I want to welcome everyone this afternoon to the Bridging the Gap, a roadmap for CCR&Rs and Intermediaries webinar. Next slide. Today, I'll start with a welcome. We'll do some introductions. We'll talk about our Bridging the Gap project work. I'll introduce you to some guest speakers. We'll do a review of our newest resource, and we will share some additional resources followed by a closing. Next slide. My name is Shannon Cameron Quinn. I'm an early care and education specialist here at CCR&Rs of America. And today I'm joined by Bevan Parker Cherkez, National Program Director for Child Care and Early Learning. And then I'm joined by Molly Smith, Executive Director for Child CCR&Rs, and Shelley Masser, the ECE Vice President, Advisory and State Policy at LIF, the Low Income Investment Fund. Next slide. So today we're really excited to share this work with you. This is a project that was made possible by the generous support of the Lilly Endowment. And we'll start by saying that the resiliency of our community's workforce and economy depends on parents having access to high quality and affordable childcare. Inclusion of childcare in community and economic development strategies not only supports local communities seeking to expand access to affordable, high-quality childcare for its workforce, but it also highlights the critical role that childcare plays in the overall well-being and economic health of the community. As more attention has been brought to the lack of high-quality, accessible and affordable childcare options across the country, we've seen an increased focus on supporting childcare. Community and economic development institutions and leaders are increasingly focusing attention on the importance of childcare and the role that they can and must play in supporting the sector. CCR&Rs of America conducted a landscape analysis and released a report, Bridging the Gap Between Childcare and Community and Economic Development. The goal of the report was to identify, inspire, and inform community and economic development funding and engagement opportunities for childcare. The landscape analysis identified community and economic development systems and examples that exist at local, regional, state, and national levels, as well as relevant funds that these entities control. The report delves further into how this complex system currently supports early childhood education and possible new entry points for childcare stakeholders into the planning, the conversations, and funding opportunities. The report was targeted to CCR&Rs, childcare stakeholders broadly, and community and economic development organizations. Next slide. So some of the key findings that surfaced throughout our research is that first, most CCR&Rs and intermediaries that we heard from have done this work for many years, with plans and strategies in place to continue. Second, localities approach their efforts to include childcare and community and economic development in a variety of ways. Each community, city, county, and state has different needs, so the solutions vary. One recommendation that we heard was to really start small. There's been great success in projects that address specific needs at a local or regional level. Finally, funding, staffing, and competing priorities were all identified as barriers for stakeholders to dedicate the necessary time, the resources needed to develop and maintain partnerships, the need to assess community needs, and collect and share data on their community and economic development efforts as it relates to childcare. But despite this, we found that there was an overwhelming consensus among those that we interviewed that there's need in the community. There's a desire for those that are doing the work to include childcare in community and economic development. Next slide. So based on our analysis of the research, we identified 3 key actions for leaders to take to be successful when working to integrate childcare into the community and economic development efforts. So these actions include the first, understanding the landscape of community and economic development and childcare in your area. Really taking the time to learn about community and economic development entities, the local childcare landscape that will ultimately contribute to greater success, as communities often have unique needs, making a one-size-fits-all approach challenging. The community and economic development efforts tend to look different depending on the location and the partnering entities. The second is establishing partnerships. Partnerships, especially those that are cross-agency or cross-sector, are vital to the success of community and economic development work that includes and supports childcare. There's a variety of potential partners to consider. One of the folks that we interviewed shared that bringing together a variety of skill sets creates a more holistic approach to the work, creating a strong consensus that building relationships and partnerships really do take time. Finally, sharing that it's based on that human connection and that the relationships to it really do work. And finally, creating a cross-sector data-driven plan. It's important to identify community needs and project goals based on data for the greatest impact. These efforts that have attempted to integrate the childcare into community and economic development should really be data-driven. One person that we interviewed shared that they have found the most success is when they have data to share and say that this is an issue, and then coming in with actionable recommendations for ways to improve things. Next slide. So using the findings from our research, we moved into the next phase of our project. We offered a community of practice to selected CCR&Rs and intermediaries across the country that were interested in starting this work or enhancing work that had already begun. The purpose of the community of practice, or COP as I'll refer to it, is to offer an opportunity for CCR&Rs and intermediaries to engage and partner in community and economic development efforts as it relates to childcare based on program goals as well as needs and opportunities in their communities. We aim to support the organizations that participated in the COP as they began to identify their own plans. They engaged in education and advocacy at economic and community development tables. We work to guide each organization through a self-assessment and planning process to really help understand and address their goals, their needs, and their community contexts. We learned together through resources and interactions to really help identify gaps and opportunities for this work. We engaged in monthly COP sessions, which included topical discussion. We had guest speakers. We engaged in large group discussions, small group discussion, breakout room work to really provide that opportunity for peer-to-peer discussion and add that additional layer of support and networking opportunity. And we also offered technical assistance in between the COP sessions to help further support their individual goals and needs. Next slide. So it was our real goal to support community and economic development efforts. We know that childcare is really an essential part of our national and community infrastructure. So it's critical to business and workforce needs, but often left out of the conversation or unrepresented in these development agendas, activities, projects, and investments. Federal, state, and local public community and economic development agencies present significant opportunity for building public-private partnerships and really looking at optimizing revenue flows to help stabilize, sustain, and grow childcare businesses and nonprofit organizations. We worked hard to support COP members through that self-assessment piece, through their goal setting and a planning process to really help them understand their big picture project goals and ultimately act on plans and activities with intended accomplishments and results. We wanted to support building capacity as in assisting COP members to develop and strengthen their skills, their abilities, and in turn supporting them to understand and advance further community and economic development participation, build on those partnerships based on their identified goals. So throughout this project, we used the landscape analysis developed earlier to begin creating a roadmap of promising practices for integrating childcare with community and economic development. It covered assessing local landscape, identifying engagement opportunities, collaborating with key stakeholders, exploring funding streams, and looking at data-driven plans. We intended for COP participants to use the tool throughout to help guide their individual projects and to help share the roadmap's final version. The roadmap was grounded in lived experience and informed by the original landscape analysis, as well as input from the COP participants who were professionals actively doing the work. It really evolved into a practical, refined resource designed to support and advance efforts in the field. We're going to take a closer look at this resource in just a bit. But first, I want you to hear from some of the folks that partnered with us, the organizations that worked to support the overall work and participated in the community of practice. So I'm going to start by introducing Bevan Parker Cherkes, National Program Director of Child Care and Early Learning at Local Initiative Support Corporation. We can go to the next slide, Candy.
Thanks, Shannon. Good afternoon or morning, everyone, depending on where you are. As Shannon said, I'm Bevan Parker Cherkes at the Local Initiative Support Corporation, or LISC. If you can go to the next slide, please. So LISC is a Community Development Financial Institution, or CDFI. I'm going to spend a minute telling you a little bit more about what a CDFI is, so that you can begin to understand how this perspective provides important context for the roadmap that's being presented today. A CDFI is a nonprofit, mission-oriented banking institution. It provides responsible and affordable financing to low-income and under-resourced communities to help achieve economic growth. CDFIs were established as part of the Department of Treasury, and the CDFI fund helps to oversee and create opportunity and availability of credit, investment capital, and financial services in distressed urban and rural areas. There are 4 types of CDFIs: banks, credit unions, loan funds, and venture capital funds, all of which provide products and services that meet the needs of economically underserved communities, filling the gap brought on by lack of access to capital. CDFIs are committed to the communities they serve, hence the name, and they really help to finance community business, including childcare, nonprofit organizations, commercial real estate, and affordable housing. So I did mention childcare. How does that really fit into the context of the work? Accessible childcare is foundational for healthy communities and economic growth. I think we're hearing this even more and more across community tables across the country. Folks are having challenges finding childcare, and that stifles the ability to participate in workforce and then fuel economic growth in locations. We understand and recognize the importance of community-led solutions to build healthier and more resilient communities. And so really working with partners on the ground to understand what gaps or needs are is how we sort of result in solution-oriented investment. Some CDFIs have a deeper knowledge of childcare and early learning landscape, and many operate long-term childcare facility funds or other program supports in addition to offering access to capital. Next slide, please. So part of a subgroup of these CDFIs that do care about childcare is part of the National Children's Facilities Network, which is a coalition of about 70 CDFIs, financial and technical assistance intermediaries, that have expertise in childcare finance and facilities. There's a lot of work being done around federal policy because historically and to date, there is no federal funding source to support facility financing for childcare. And so we really work as a coalition to understand best practices, share resources, and then also advocate for systems change. Many of us are part of this broader network, which is the Opportunity Finance Network, which is a coalition of more than 470 CDFIs across the country. There's a CDFI locator that I think Candy is going to drop the link to. And this is a way for organizations or childcare providers to identify a CDFI that might be working within their community. Next slide, please. So even if a CDFI doesn't have a specialty in childcare, chances are they're working with childcare providers anyway as part of a small business or nonprofit ecosystem. So as I mentioned, childcare fits within the mission and orientation and goals for many CDFIs. And chances are they're sort of touching that sector through small business lending, economic development activities. A lot of CDFIs focus on affordable housing. We're seeing more and more co-location of childcare within affordable housing contexts. Anchor institutions and community assets, large nonprofits operating Head Start centers also fall into community facilities portfolios. Some of those who have that more targeted expertise that I mentioned are really well-versed in the finance and development of high-quality childcare early learning environments, offering technical assistance, pre-development support to help folks really navigate through expansion to new sites, quality improvement, or health and safety facility strategies. There's also a whole host of lending products that are made available for, again, sort of through small business or that are tailored to the needs of childcare operators, some pass-through grant activity. We really serve as a financial intermediary. And if you go to the next slide, I'll show you how, which is as many CDFIs, we really work to pool public and private dollars together and then marshal that capital to communities that need it. Again, working with partners on the ground to understand the appropriate community context. Where does the investment need to be made to really help support a thriving, vibrant neighborhood? So LISC started in 1979, and we currently have boots on the ground in 37 local offices across the country, along with rural partnerships in touching 2,100 counties. We really build our relationship with other CDFIs and an array of national and local partners to deploy our supports. So as I said, sort of pooling that capital and ensuring it's going to the right places. We leverage our national network of partners, offer new models of partnership and funding streams to connect childcare providers to the right set of capital and resources that they need in order to sustain and grow their businesses. In the field of childcare facilities and policy, we've been around for over 25 years and continue to be a thought leader in the space. Next slide, please. So here at LISC, my job as part of our 10 national program teams is to get my other 9 program teams and other folks to care about childcare. Really, childcare is at the nexus of community development. None of these other aspects can work without it. And so we really try and embed that lens of childcare across all of our work. Accessible quality care means that children are attending early learning settings that are supporting brain development, and then parents are really participating in the workforce, which again is contributing and spurring that economic growth in places across the country. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to take a minute to step back and, oh, I'm sorry, we can skip this one. Go ahead, Candy, thanks. Go ahead and take a minute to talk about LISC and CCR&Rs early partnership, which really started sort of at the beginning of COVID when we were recognizing that there were some potential new resources coming to bear. However, we're working in a sector that has historically been under-resourced. And so thinking about how we could leverage each other's strengths as both financial intermediaries and technical assistance organizations to help really support the childcare sector. We know CCR&Rs have a really strong connection to childcare providers. They form these really trusted relationships, while CDFIs can provide these capital resources and other technical assistance around finance and facilities. So our partnership was really intended to understand how we could better resource the sector and think about innovation and development to create a really comprehensive series of supports that best meet provider needs through that continuum of organizational growth. Next slide. So I think Candy just dropped the link to the paper that we wrote. This is one of the core capability and core competency matrices that's provided within that context. So again, I think it's really important for us to understand who can do what. And again, not every CDFI is the same, not every CCR&R is the same, but this was really intended to do some asset mapping so people could understand in their own communities who can do what, and if we bring everyone together, how can we sort of offer these this continuum of support. So really thinking about coordination, deduplication of efforts, reducing provider confusion or burden, and then really helping to sort of navigate resources across the sector. Next slide, please. So currently, these are sort of some of the strategies we pursue. It's a lot. I'm just going to call out a few, and I think Candy's going to drop some resources in here that I thought would be particularly helpful to this audience. In the sort of realm of capacity building, we do business coaching and resources for our business development organizations and financial opportunity centers. These are places where childcare operators are probably going in and seeking advice, but not getting expertise around childcare financing in particular. And so we're really working with existing organizations to help them understand how to better serve the needs of childcare operators, sort of creating this no wrong door policy. The other aspect of some of the thought leadership and technical resources we've done is the Making Space Matter report, which really lays out why and how facilities have a high impact on childcare and early childhood development, just really making the case for investment in facility and infrastructure in childcare. We have a co-location impact calculator, back to sort of that earlier comment about childcare being co-located with housing. We're seeing a lot more of this around our community development activities. And so this is an effort to help developers understand the impact that this co-location of childcare with other community amenities can have on the residents and community nearby. So this is for us to develop a shared language around impact and outcomes, and then for folks to really be able to track those milestones and benchmarks over time to understand what that looks like for members of their community. We've also done a little work on facility cost modeling, which is available through the National Children's Facilities Network. And coming soon, we have work with the Verizon Small Business Development Resources. Again, taking sort of a platform that's oriented to small businesses at large, and then ensuring there's that lens of childcare on it. So how can we utilize existing resources and then augment or add some supports or resources that help to really speak to childcare operators explicitly. We've also spent the last 6 months convening a group of CDFIs to explore capital access for childcare providers across the country. We'll have a website with findings and opportunities for action posted within the year. Next slide. And finally, I just wanted to give a little illustration of what it really looks like when we're on the ground working with community-based organizations like childcare resource and referral agencies. You know, we're really a nimble organization with deep expertise, but not looking to duplicate services. So as we're working in communities, you know, how can we support, how can we fill resource gaps? How can we build capacity of our partner organizations? Oftentimes that is around that facility expertise, because 9 times out of 10, that's not in existence. Knowing and recognizing that facility funds are sort of point in time, we really want to think about these comprehensive supports that can be available to operators at any time they need it. And so thinking about technical assistance to CBOs around those improvements or upgrades, thinking again around long-term support, so advocating for facility funding to be made available through economic or community development resources, and then all the while working together to communicate how this impacts the childcare community. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Shannon. My contact information is on the next slide, and I welcome any follow-up. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bevan. We appreciate you sharing and also appreciate the ongoing partnership, the support and expertise throughout this work. Next, we're going to hear from Molly Smith, Executive Director at CCR&Rs in Indiana.
Thanks, Shannon. Hey, everyone. I am from the Executive Director, like mentioned, at CCR&Rs. And so we'll start off a little bit of information about who we serve and some of the supports we offer. So we are one of 5 child care resource and referral agencies across the state of Indiana. As you can see on the slide, we only serve 3 counties out of the 92, but within those 3 counties, there are a lot of things happening. So throughout Hamilton, Hendricks, and Marion counties, we have 1.5 million people. About 25% of the children under the age of 6 live here, and just over 1,000 regulated programs. So we serve a lot of individuals, but just knowing that they are very diverse counties. So as noted here, you can see how income varies greatly across those 3 counties, and then what the cost of care is and how that might affect income and the amount of money they're spending on childcare when they're still trying to manage all of the other pieces of life, such as mortgages and car payments and things like that. So just knowing all of this, we were looking at this grant, the Bridging the Gap grant, and we made the decision based on a couple of factors, but really to focus on Hamilton County. We had started some work in a previous county the year before and saw some really great results. Lots of relationship development and good partnerships came from that, which then led to more supported work, more awareness. So we wanted to take that and duplicate appropriately into this other county. And so one of the things that you might notice also about Hamilton County, we see that they have a higher median income. They have the most educated workforce. They're nationally ranked as one of the best places to live, and a really high population increase. So what happens is there's a misconception often that Hamilton County, the folks that live there, that they can afford care and that the care is readily available. And so there are significant gaps in that availability. And often a lot of the folks, especially in the food industry and different retail, they can't afford to live in the county. So they're often traveling into Hamilton County. And what happens is childcare then becomes another barrier. So really taking a look at where we thought we could bridge the gap again and see what could happen. Really our goals with this was to duplicate some of those successful relationship building and ideas that came from a previous county into Hamilton County. So that was really our goal for this Bridging the Gap grant. Next slide, please. So a few of the things that we did as we started off, I have segmented this into different pieces for a timeline perspective, because as much as we want to do things right away, it does take time to build those relationships and make sure that they're quality. So during the first few months, we used grant dollars to, again, join chambers. This is a way into, again, the business community. There were additional grant funds that also allowed us to attend those meetings, the different roundtables that were happening, sponsored events, and really get the feel of the economic landscape because, again, with our expertise in childcare, we also know there's experts in other fields that we need to learn from. So making sure that we were listening first. But what we were learning is a lot about what the folks in the community didn't know about childcare and how that childcare was connected back to economic development, the bottom line for businesses, and overall community. So we were able to offer some of that insight, and so we were able to host and facilitate employer roundtables that was specifically focused on childcare. And again, data is always important, but then bringing those stories that support that data because we want to make it real for the folks that live and work there. There was also a state-funded employer-sponsored childcare grant that was happening at the same time, and this was supporting 2 of the Hamilton County Economic Development Corporations. So we were able to work alongside those folks as they were developing their plans and putting those things into place for implementation. So it worked hand in hand in some areas, and we also were able to tap those who had expertise within our own organization. So our HR manager, we have a program resource manager. So some of the backgrounds that our staff had already in place, we leveraged them in some of these meetings to ensure that, again, those different perspectives were brought to the table and it wasn't a childcare focused only from the provider aspect or the family. We wanted to make sure that we had big picture happening. We did hit a couple roadblocks, and so that made us go to some alternative plans. But while we were building this up in Hamilton County, those local chambers of commerce and nonprofit areas, they were huge in partnering because it's, again, those connections and those warm handoffs. So we really relied heavily on the folks we did know and had great relationships with to connect us to the next person and make sure that there was an understanding that, again, we were there to learn and then share what we had, excuse me, knowledge about childcare and how it affected all of these things. So those roadblocks that we ran into, next slide, please. Looked a little bit like the idea that sometimes you don't know all the projects that are happening in a county. Obviously, we don't want to work in silos, but sometimes it is hard to do those cross collaborations. Excuse me. And one of the things we found was the timelines were not matching. We saw some initial engagement was low, and we could see that there were some mismatched priorities, and not mismatched in a negative way, just they were not aligned in the way for this Bridging the Gap grant. So we pivoted and went back to Hendricks County, who we had done similar work with, and were able to pick up where we left off. It was not needing to join those chambers to engage with some of those folks. We were already there. And so we hit the ground running. CCR&Rs of America was definitely very supportive and helpful as we did this transition. And so we had started earlier a few years ago with a childcare task force that allowed us to really take the information that we had learned and go to those chambers and advertise how we were really wanting to engage employers. So through that allowed for us to engage employers in info sessions. So not only at the chamber meetings, but separate info sessions about how childcare answers can support some of those unknowns. You may be in an industry that you feel like has nothing to do with childcare, but it really does because, again, your employees need that quality childcare to show up to work every day. So we were able to do that and gain new relationships with employers, offer them surveys to really find out what their staff and their employees really needed and how that might affect longevity, which we know then affects the turnover rate at a business. So helping make those connections was really impactful. We were also able to award chamber memberships to childcare providers that were part of the childcare task force. We often know that childcare programs, they're busy throughout the day. They do not have additional funds to join these meetings, but their voice needs to be heard. They are a small business. They need to be at the table. So with those awarded memberships, they were able to not only join the chamber, but there were dollars for substitutes to pay so they could step away during the day and other dollars with professional development. So this was something that childcare providers had not had access to and really brought them to the table to have those conversations. The employer surveys and sessions started out slow, but we have been able to gain traction over the past few months and really started to see some of that awareness. It's all, again, if employers have the time and if that's their priority. And we know that that shifts throughout the year. Open enrollment for health benefits. There's always something going on that can take the momentum away from childcare, but we just had to be patient and make sure that we were reaching out to them at the right time when they were ready to participate. And then we also were able to take advantage of several of the chamber's marketing, and they gave us presentation time. So some media blitzes, we had folks from the newspaper give us some free space, and then aligned with that with some paid space to be able to advertise not only the task force that was happening, but then our employer info sessions, and just the awareness again of all of the services that Child Care Answers and the other child care resource and referral agencies can do to support employers in the business world. Next slide, please. So this was future plans. These are still ongoing, some of which we have even expanded upon. But our ongoing information sessions have continued. We offer those about every 6 weeks, and they're a virtual session. People can hop on and off. We've had folks who actually from other areas across the state have hopped on, and then we've been able to connect them directly to their child care resource and referral agency that can specifically help them out. We've had really great questions, some of which even helps us improve what we're doing because it's an industry we've not worked directly with. So that ongoing relationship has been great. The Child Care Task Force continues to grow. We've received our first grant outside of this grant here, and we are able to do some strategic planning, implementation, and some more research into childcare overall. So that has continued to grow. We've also seen a new engagement with job fairs. Often we will find that when we go to job fairs, one person literally will go around to each of the employers to check out what are the different types of jobs that they're looking for, or excuse me, employees that they're looking for, and then also help educate them on what we do, that our services are free, and how we can support them and their employees, because we do know it affects the bottom line. Everyone is at a different space. Some people are hiring desperately because they have so many jobs to fill. So that is not the right time for them. Whereas others have a little bit more space, and they can think about how potentially childcare benefits could attract new employees. And then, of course, continued follow-ups, those testimonials we've been gathering. We were able to make a video that showcased Child Care Answers and the work that we've done as a business ourselves in making sure that childcare is front and center for employees, and how a family-friendly environment does support that retention of staff. Next slide, please. And lastly, the roadmap guide. I think for us, there was a lot of work that went into some of the initial support into Hamilton County. But once we had done it in another county, we were able to just hit the ground running, and knowing that our shift was, we were able to shift pretty quickly, just knowing that we had relationships built. So as Shannon mentioned, it is about relationships. It's making sure that you know who to connect with, and people know how to connect with you to see what they need. And if you don't have the answer, that you're going to work to get that answer. So really identifying who those folks are, what community groups, chambers, who are the decision makers. Sometimes it's not about what you're saying, but it's who is saying it. So was there someone that really valued childcare and understood how it connected directly back to the bottom line for businesses? Was there someone who could say that message and influence others, and then bring Child Care Answers to the table to really help support that? So making sure that we had that in mind, going into communities to make sure that we were listening first, knowing that Hamilton County was somewhere that we didn't know a lot about when it came to the economic piece. We had to go in and listen and learn about their processes, the different pieces of work that they'd already done, what they were looking forward to, and just making sure that we understood that, because we are wanting to learn from them. We want to share, of course, but in order to make sure that we're sharing what is appropriate and helping them with what they need, we had to be listeners first. So that was really important. Knowing that we had to pivot, right? And we went back to the people we knew. We went back to those stakeholders within a county that we already had relationships with, engaged them, and then continued working on supporting the childcare with the employees and employers of the county. And then again, strategizing, it's knowing who you can rely on and contact and ask for help. Again, Child Care Aware was very helpful and supportive, brainstorming, making sure that we were on the right track. Sometimes when you are engaged so closely with the community, you don't see the big picture. And so just making sure we had someone who would continue to help us with that. Some of the other things that came out of this was we were invited to join a steering committee in Hamilton County. They now have a strategic plan that has childcare identified specifically, and so I am part of that. We also received a small grant to continue work in that county to make sure that childcare is front and center. We also continued in Hendricks County with that childcare task force and developed a coalition. It's a workforce coalition where transportation, housing, and childcare are those identifiers, and we've had our debut for that. Again, mentioning that we did receive a $30,000 childcare innovation grant to continue working on that. And then just knowing that we had a couple other surprise things that came up. I was able to go and meet with our newly appointed governor with a childcare provider and a parent from our Family Advisory Council. We've just had a lot of successes, and again, that comes back to the relationships and the connections that we were able to build. So again, just grateful for the opportunity with CCAoA, but then also with you here today to see if there's any tidbits that you can take back to your community and potentially use to grow those relationships and make sure that childcare is something sustainable in your community. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Molly. We appreciate you taking the time to share the important work you've been engaged in Indiana. And next, we're going to hear from Shelley Masser, ECE Vice President of the Advisory and State Policy at Low Income Investment Fund.
Thanks, Shannon. Hey, everybody. I'm Shelley Masser. As Shannon said, I'm the Vice President of Advisory and State Policy at LIF. Maybe we can go to the next slide. Thank you to Bevan for her great description of CDFIs. I was just telling her earlier how much I appreciate how she puts into context the work that CDFIs do. LIF partners with LISC quite a bit. Like LISC, we are a national CDFI with a variety of strategies around supporting early care and education. I thought we had a slide that had our vision and mission, but maybe not, so I'll just tell you. Our vision is that everyone live in a community of equity, opportunity, and well-being, and we drive capital to make that happen, as Bevan described. Our two areas of focus really are affordable housing and childcare facilities, and so we do that through these variety of strategies. We manage government dollars to help invest in childcare facilities in various locations where we operate. So we're in California, New York, DC, and Georgia primarily, although we do work in a variety of states. Those are where our offices are. We support other smaller CDFIs and local nonprofits in helping them understand how to work with childcare businesses and what does it mean to work on childcare facilities. My team does a lot of research and policy recommendations, and then we also do quite a bit of policy advocacy. Like LISC, we're also a member of the National Children's Facilities Network and the Opportunity Finance Network. So lots of overlapping work. And Bevan and I try and stay on the presentation circuit together quite a bit. So maybe we could go to the next slide. All right. So I only have a couple, I think this is my only other slide. So I'll just tell you a little bit about our project, which was in Bullock County, Georgia. I'll tell you a little bit about how we ended up working there, what that looked like, what are some of the results that we had, and then as Molly's talked about, some of the things that has led to. And by the way, Molly, great to see all of the additional work that's happened since your participation in the cohort. So on the top right of this slide, you see a little cover of a report that LIF did. We spent a year traveling around the state of Georgia, asking questions about what was happening with childcare across the state. We talked to childcare providers. We visited their facilities. We talked to regional planning organizations. We talked to city council members, economic development authorities, a whole variety of different stakeholders across the state to really see sort of like how were people thinking about childcare, what was going on in the state, and what more could be done. And what we learned is local governments are thinking about childcare. They know it's an issue. Economic development agencies are also thinking about childcare. They know it's an issue, but really they didn't know what to do, and they didn't know how serious the problem was in any given community. I mean, that was general across the state. We talked to 13 mayors. They all said, yes, childcare is a problem. And we don't really know how big of a problem it is, and we don't know what we can do about it. One of the places we talked to was the Economic Development Authority in Bullock County, Georgia. What's unique about Bullock County is right next to Bullock, there's a large Hyundai EV battery plant that has now been built. At the time, the estimate of the number of jobs at this EV battery plant, plus all of the ancillary businesses that were coming into a quite rural area of Georgia. If you're from Georgia, you know what I mean when I say it was really farmland and small towns where they're building this EV battery plant. Right outside of Savannah, about an hour. So Savannah is really the closest real city. And so within so to the sort of pieces of the toolkit, the first thing we did was go back to the Economic Development Authority and say, hey, we have this opportunity to think together about how you can address the childcare supply in your community, at least in your community. It's really touching a 9-county region, but this is where we were able to work with. And so would you want to do that? And they agreed, yes, that was something they wanted to work on. They had already a child care advisory committee that they were pulling together. And so it was a perfect opportunity to bring the different pieces together. So when we looked at understanding the landscape with this initial assessment, we did some mapping. This is the map that you can see sort of in the middle of the slide. You can't really tell, but it's just showing the different places and seriousness of the child care shortage across Bullock County. What we did know was that within a 5-mile radius of that EV battery plant, which hadn't been built at the time, it is now built, there were 5 childcare providers. So and there was no housing. So, it was a combination issue that they were trying to solve for. So we did that. We talked to the Economic Development Authority. And then in terms of the establishing partnerships component, we really relied on them to bring their child care advisory group together. It was co-led by Ogeechee Tech, which is their local technical college, does a lot of training of child care providers. And the Bullock County Schools, the superintendent of Bullock County Schools was the other chair of this. And then they had Statesboro, the city that's sort of the center of Bullock County, and a variety of other partners. The R&R was at the table, really thinking together about what did they want to understand more about childcare within their communities, and then what kind of a plan could they develop to address this massive economic growth and the lack of childcare at the same time. So we worked with them throughout this cohort for about 5 months, ended up with a set of strategies that were recommended to them. We worked with them to develop some shared priorities so that they could think about then putting these strategies underneath these priorities. There's a little snapshot of these on the bottom right corner of this slide, but I'll just tell you what the 5 things were that we recommended. One was thinking about some sort of subsidy fund that they could put together. If you're familiar with the Michigan Tri-Share approach, and now several other states have it as well, we thought Bullock County could pilot something like that for subsidizing the cost of care, as well as strengthening the business operations for providers in the community. We additionally thought the next strategy was that they should establish a separate fund that could bring together public and private and philanthropic resources into addressing the facilities needs, very similar to what Bevan described when she described the bringing together of the public and private dollars to support building of childcare facilities and financing that building. The third strategy we recommended was that everybody working on community development should understand what was in the pipeline for expanding childcare, which providers were interested in expanding, and how could they help them in opening or expanding new childcare businesses, thinking about incentives, again, going back to the 2 previous strategies, thinking about funding, and then how could they then provide technical assistance. 4th, we recommended that the city and the county look at their regulatory environment. This is something LIFT does quite a bit for cities, is help them understand how their policies are either inhibiting or supporting building supply of childcare in their communities. So that includes things like zoning, business licensing processes, fees, etc. And then also thinking about how could they streamline and make it easier for childcare businesses to move through their local regulatory processes. And then finally, we recommended that they review public and quasi-public entities should review their real estate portfolios and determine where there are places where they could site a new childcare business that could help accommodate a new childcare center, or potentially if they were building housing, how could they support including family childcare in new housing development. So those were the 5 strategies we recommended. I will say that since we started working with the Economic Development Authority, there's been a shakeup in the county elected officials, and so support is a little bit different than when we started. So one consideration always is, and Molly somewhat referred to this, is what's the political environment in which any of the communities are operating, and how can you adjust to address any political changes. That's been, I will say, a bit of a difficult road for Bullitt County, but they are continuing to work and make progress that they can. For LIFT specifically, we've been able to take this work and work with 4 cities across the state of Georgia to help them see their role in building supply of childcare, help them connect childcare supply building to their economic development plans and their community development plans, as well as housing plans. We've just actually wrapped up the cohort a couple of months ago and are just writing up the results of that now. We developed 2 resources, which I will pop in the chat for you. One was for family child care providers, how to navigate city processes, and one was for cities, how to think about supporting building supply of child care in their communities. We did write these with Georgia regulations in mind, so I'll acknowledge that, but there's a lot of transferable information in there if it's helpful. So with that, I'll just say thank you so much for joining the webinar today. Many thanks to CCAoA and LISC for allowing LIFT to be a part of this cohort. We really learned a ton, and we're happy to learn from the other regions that were doing this work.
Thanks so much, Shelley. And thanks also again to Molly and Bevan. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your insight and experience from our work together. It's very evident that your contributions and the projects that you were able to work on and complete throughout really highlight the impact of the benefit of that collaborative learning and innovation. And so building on that momentum, I'm very excited to introduce our latest resource, the Bridging the Gap Between Childcare and Community and Economic Development, a roadmap for CCR&Rs and intermediaries, designed to support and guide continued progress in this work. So the intent and purpose. As I mentioned earlier, the roadmap was informed by our original landscape analysis and report findings. We wanted it to be a tool to be used by community organizations that support childcare, to really help inform outreach and cross-system engagement efforts, and to help infuse childcare into those conversations and efforts. And as I mentioned, and as you heard from our guest speakers, to provide a reflective voice in this roadmap, the CCR&Rs and those intermediaries that were actively involved in the community of practice were also involved in the formation of the resource to really help strengthen its lens and purview. Many of, as you heard, they are engaged in innovative and promising practices that can help inform and guide others. So to help deepen the impact of the findings in that report we mentioned earlier, the roadmap really aims to provide concrete steps to help ready and equip CCR&Rs and intermediaries to engage or partner within community and economic development efforts. So the intent of the work is to launch a path for those folks to create outreach strategies and resources that will prime those development entities for engagement and consideration of childcare in planning and also funding decisions. So our overall goals for developing the roadmap were to inform important decisions pertaining to include childcare and community and economic development, to provide an understanding of the needs, existing work, the key players, the funding streams that exist in communities, and then to share strategies and resources to assist in working with stakeholders. So we broke the roadmap into sections based on the analysis of the research we conducted earlier, with those 3 key actions that we identified for leaders to take to be successful when they're working to integrate childcare into these community and economic development efforts. So we broke the sections into understanding the landscape, the partnership piece, and then the cross-sector data-driven implementation. The roadmap was designed as a tool to be a living interactive document. We wanted it to be fully accessible online, and it's designed to be filled out as you go. So you'll see a map icon that is developed throughout, which is used as a prompt to help you pause and enter relevant information for each section, and capture any insights along the way that'll serve as valuable references for your future planning. And to support work across multiple communities, or for those who prefer to complete and print specific sections, we added additional planning space at the end of the roadmap. And there's also embedded resources throughout, really giving you that direct access to the tools and the guidance that can help further support the efforts. So next slide, we're going to take a little bit closer look at the sections that we developed of the roadmap. So the first section is understanding the landscape. So we really started with those foundational basics. To do this work, we need to be able to define terms simply. We define community development as a process where community members can come together to take that collective action and generate solutions to common problems. We defined economic development, the short and long-term process and practice designed to create jobs, economic activity, efforts designed to address equity and create wealth at various levels, the local, the regional, the state, and national. We talked about effectively bridging the gap between childcare and community and economic development, as it's super important to understand that local landscape in order to assess current efforts, identify ways to achieve the desired outcome. We use the term bridging the gap because it refers to making a connection between 2 or more things and working toward making a difference between them. So those with a vested interest in childcare that need further support to explore those potential opportunities that lie within that community and economic development space. We also wanted to assist in spotting trends, collecting current data for goal setting and decision making, helping to look at identifying gaps, looking at strengths, the resources, the needs, really laying that foundation and establishing solid goals for future action. We wanted it to be a tool to help you understand what work is happening, who's doing it, what might be missing, providing information to help identify key players, developing strategies to engage with those potential players. We talk about naming the problem, really indicating how helpful it is to just start by naming your problem that you want to try to solve, gathering information to obtain a thorough understanding of what the problem is. And information can be gathered by various ways, reviewing data, talking to those that are impacted, really working through the process as you continue to refine your research. Identifying organizations. There's a variety of community and economic development organizations at various levels, national, state, local. Some are public entities, while others are nonprofit organizations. States have branches within their government structure to help support community and economic development. And even many regions, counties, and cities have similar structures as well. We talk about how important it is to find existing work and to identify if the work is already happening, if there's organizations or entities that are doing the work or plans that might exist. And we talk about how you can often find plans through an internet search or by connecting with people and organizations already doing the work. So it's super important to find existing work. Next slide. Partnerships. It's very important to consider partnerships as part of that collaboration or the act of working together to achieve the same goal. We highlight this as a very valuable strategy when working towards achieving those big picture results. We know that collaboration is much stronger when organizations partner with others who might have varying skills or expertise, access to information that can help strengthen relationships, really harnessing a collective strength behind that big picture goal in the work ahead. Cross-sector collaboration is also an important strategy for bridging that gap between childcare and community and economic development, and can really help to address complex challenges. Building a team, it's important to build a strong team as this is critical to the success of the work. Bringing together people with diverse skills, knowledge, perspectives, really working to build a coordinated team can help with that powerful collaboration piece. That you can really complement each other and really fill in those gaps and enhance the big picture outcome. Messaging. Childcare and community and economic development are well poised to partner and support one another and come together to really share common goals. Specifically, both are working to create and sustain that healthy, thriving community. Helping potential partners to understand through messaging why childcare is important for many reasons. But when it comes to community and economic development, we know that this is an important tool to support the workforce. So we have to convey the reliable access to affordable, high quality childcare can help ensure families can participate in the workforce, therefore making them more productive. It can also help communities attract and retain workers. When parents can work, communities benefit. All of these help strengthen the economies of communities. Next, we talk about SMART goals, really taking the time to set those key milestones and goals that are specific and measurable, that the outcomes are able to be measured, and making sure that you want that you're able to achieve in your collaboration. Setting those key milestones and goals can help you clarify the purpose, the scope, and the direction that you'd like to go within the collaboration. So we encourage using SMART goals to help you track the progress, evaluate the results, and celebrate the achievements of your team. Next, we talk about feedback and how that can really help improve your collaboration, as it can help you identify strengths, weaknesses, and areas for improvement. It can also help you recognize the contributions and challenges and the needs of your fellow team members. And it should be something that is done quite regularly and used to assess and adjust the plan as needed. Next slide. Our final section, bringing it together, developing and executing a cross-sector data-driven plan. So having a plan is critical to the overall success in the work. It should be cross-sector. It should include that feedback component and involvement from people in various sectors. We look internally, talking about identifying the problem that you're working to solve, using the information gathered in your initial analysis, the data collected, to help identify the specific problem that you're working to solve. Using those SMART goals internally to set the objectives for the work. Things like identifying staff, a list of partners to engage, details about the data, including where it's available, agreements with organizations, information about additional funding opportunities. And then the cross-sector data-driven approach to including childcare and community and economic development can be unique to each community. There really isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to planning, and we take that into account. There might be one plan that many organizations or entities work from, or different plans for each. It really varies based on the problem you're trying to solve, the funding that you have access to, who you're partnering with, the participating organizations, who's in leadership, and the systems that you have in place. And some components that we ask you to consider throughout is participating organizations, the actual roles that they'll play, the resources that they'll bring to the table, a summary of the work that you're going to be working on, information on funding, data that will be collected. So we have this broken down in this section too. Also, timeline for revisiting and updating as you go. And then we also included robust questions at the end of this section to help approach building and moving forward with a plan. So this is just a quick glimpse into what we've included in this tool. So we invite you to really see this roadmap as not just a guide, but really as a catalyst for action. So whether your organization is just beginning to explore the intersection of childcare and community and economic development, or if you're already deeply engaged, we designed this resource to really meet you where you are. We hope you'll use it to spark new conversation, identify and strengthen partnerships, and really prioritize childcare as an essential infrastructure in your community's growth. We can go to the next slide. So with all of that being said, we have created a dedicated page on our website to support this work. It includes the resources that we mentioned today, the landscape analysis, the Bridging the Gap roadmap. We've included a new fact sheet. We have some really great case studies on there that are highlighting how different organizations are engaged with this initiative. We encourage you to bookmark this page and refer to it regularly as a guide to inform and enhance your efforts, and we will add to it as new resources are developed. Next slide. And so finally, I'm very excited to give you a peek at a peer learning community that is coming soon in the fall of 2025. We will be offering this professional development group opportunity to Child Care Aware of America members. I believe you'll have a link in the chat if you'd like to explore membership further, but we will be meeting on a monthly basis with monthly topics focused on key themes. We'll have guest speakers. There'll be opportunity for peer-to-peer networking. We'll have breakout discussions, case study sharing. We'll do some collaborative problem solving. Registration will begin in August, and you'll find further information on this opportunity coming out in our member newsletter, as well as through email invitation. If you have any questions about this new opportunity, feel free to reach out to us. And in closing, as we wrap up today's session, it's our hope that you leave feeling inspired, informed, and really ready to take those meaningful steps towards bridging the gap between childcare and community and economic development. The roadmap that we've shared has been a labor of love, and it's more than a guide. It's a call to action shaped by the voices and innovations of those that are already leading the work. So whether you're forming new partnerships or you're working on influencing policy or deepening your community impact, we encourage you to use this resource to help drive your collaboration forward and really elevate childcare as a cornerstone of thriving and equitable communities. We see it as a powerful opportunity for organizations to lead the way in that cross-sector collaboration we talked about by engaging business leaders, policymakers, educators, community foundations, and families to really unlock new funding streams and possibilities while building stronger relationships. So together, we can really reimagine childcare, not just as a support system, but as an essential infrastructure for a healthy economy and society. We know that every family deserves access to quality and affordable childcare, and that every child deserves to be safe, nurtured, and have access to learning. High quality childcare isn't just good for families, it's really good for business, and it's good for our economy, and it's vital to our nation's future. So with that, I say let's move forward with shared strategies and collective leadership to close the gap and to build a stronger, more equitable future for all. I thank you for being here. You'll find an evaluation link in the chat. We do take your feedback seriously and appreciate you taking the time to fill that out. You will receive the recording, the links to the resources that you heard today, and we hope that you have a great day.